The Princess of Tears. Part 2 by Deneen Priso. Roots and Rhythms African Folktales Channel. The celebrations in the kingdom continued, the people rejoicing in the return of their princess. Esi's laughter filled the palace halls, a sound so pure it felt as though it could banish even the darkest of memories. The king and queen walked with renewed purpose, their grief replaced by a cautious hope. Yet I couldn't share in their joy, not fully. Because I knew the lake was still waiting. One night, as the palace fell silent and the lanterns dimmed, I found myself standing at the edge of the lake again. I didn't remember walking there, but my feet had carried me as if they knew the way better than my mind. The water was calm, its surface undisturbed, but the air around it felt alive, heavy with something unseen. I crouched by the shore, staring into the depths. For a long time, nothing happened. The whispers were gone, the ripples still. I began to think I had imagined it all, that the curse had truly been lifted and the witch's shadow had faded forever. And then the water moved. At first, it was subtle, a faint ripple, as though something deep below had stirred. I leaned closer, my pulse quickening. The ripple grew stronger, spreading outward in concentric circles. The air turned cold, and I could feel the weight of the lake pressing against me. And then I saw her. The witch's face appeared beneath the surface, pale and translucent, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Her lips curled into a smile that was both mocking and triumphant. "You thought it was over, didn't you?" she said, her voice echoing in the stillness. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. You're gone," I stammered. Esi broke the curse. "You can't be here." Her laughter was like the crack of ice on a frozen river. "You simple fool," she said. "The curse may be broken, but the balance has not been restored." "What do you mean?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Esi is free. The shadows are gone. What more is there?" The witch's smile widened, her form shifting and flickering like a reflection on water. "Balance is never so easily mended," she said. "You think you've saved her, but the cost has yet to be paid." I felt the weight of her words like a stone in my chest. "What cost?" "You will see," she said. Her voice grew softer, fading like a receding tide. "The lake remembers. And so do I." Her face disappeared, the water stilling once more. But the chill remained, seeping into my skin, into my bones. The whispers grew louder in the days that followed, not just in my mind but in the air itself. The villagers spoke of strange things, shadows moving in the forests, a chill that lingered even in the midday sun. The crops, which had begun to thrive after Esi's return, now wilted inexplicably, their leaves turning black at the edges. The queen noticed it too. One morning, as we walked through the palace gardens, she turned to me, her eyes filled with worry. "Do you feel it?" she asked. I nodded. "The curse may be gone, but something is still wrong." She looked toward the lake, her expression haunted. "I fear we've only traded one nightmare for another." Esi, for her part, seemed untouched by the growing unease. She laughed and played, her small feet running through the palace halls as if she had no memory of the years spent in the lake. Yet sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, I caught her staring out the window toward the water, her face unreadable. One evening, as the sun set and the shadows grew long, I found her sitting at the edge of the lake. She was barefoot, her toes just brushing the surface, and her gaze was distant. "Esi," I called softly, approaching her. "What are you doing out here?" She turned to me, her eyes wide and filled with something I couldn't quite place, fear, perhaps, or sorrow. "I can still feel them," she said. "Feel who?" "The shadows," she whispered. "They're gone, but they're not really gone. They're waiting." A chill ran through me. I crouched beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They can't hurt you anymore," I said, though my voice wavered. You're free. She shook her head. No one is free from the lake. Her words stayed with me long after she had gone to bed. The breaking point came on a moonless night, when the air grew so cold that frost formed on the palace windows despite the summer season. I woke to the sound of Esi screaming, her cries piercing through the walls like a blade. I ran to her room, finding the queen already there, clutching her daughter tightly. Esi's small body was trembling, her skin slick with sweat. They are here, she sobbed. They are here for me. There's nothing there, the queen whispered, though her voice was filled with desperation. You're safe now. But Esi shook her head violently. The lake, she cried. They want me to go back. The king burst into the room, his eyes wide with panic. What's happening? He demanded. The curse, I said, my voice heavy. It was never truly lifted. We gathered in the throne room, the air thick with tension. The queen held Esi close, her face pale as the king paced furiously. We have to do something, he said. We can't lose her again. But what? The queen asked, her voice breaking. The witch is gone. Who can help us now? I hesitated, the weight of the truth pressing down on me. The witch isn't gone, I said finally. She's still in the lake. The king froze, his eyes narrowing. What do you mean? She spoke to me, I said. She said the balance hasn't been restored. That the cost has yet to be paid. What cost? The queen demanded. I don't know, I admitted. But I think she wants Esi to return. No, the queen shouted, clutching her daughter tighter. We won't give her back. The king's face darkened, his fists clenching. Then we fight, he said. Whatever comes for her, we will face it together. But the lake had other plans. As the clock struck midnight, the ground began to shake, a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within the earth. The air grew colder still, and the whispers returned, louder than ever. Kofi. Sewa. Adama. The witch's voice echoed through the palace, carrying with it the weight of the lake itself. The doors to the throne room burst open, and a gust of icy wind swept through, extinguishing every flame. In the darkness, I saw them, shadows crawling across the walls, their forms twisting and writhing. The lake had come for Esi. The king drew his sword, standing between the shadows and his family. You will not take her, he roared. But the shadows surged forward, unstoppable. They wrapped around Esi, pulling her from her mother's arms. The queen screamed, lunging after her, but it was too late. The shadows carried Esi through the open doors, their tendrils dragging her toward the lake. I ran after them, my heart pounding. Esi! I shouted. Hold on. She looked back at me, her eyes wide with fear. Kofi, she cried. And then she was gone, swallowed by the water. The lake churned violently, its surface a maelstrom of shadows and light. The witch's voice rang out, triumphant and mocking. Balance has been restored, she said. But the lake will never forget. The water stilled, and Esi's faint cry echoed once before fading into silence. The king and queen collapsed to their knees at the water's edge, their sobs filling the night. And me? I stared at the lake, my hands trembling, knowing that it would always be watching. Waiting.